Welcome to the Pathways in Excellence webinar, brought to you today by Solent University and Southampton Football Club. My name is Kevin Rogers and I am Director of Solent Law School at Solent University, and together with Caroline Walsh, who is the Director of Solent Business School, we are co-chairing this event. Located in central Southampton, Solent University offers a range of courses covering everything from law to management to marketing, maritime, leadership and accounting and finance. It is a fantastic university in the heart of Southampton city centre. We're all very well versed on Zoom now and we know the appropriate Zoom etiquette, but if I could remind you to keep yourself on mute, please. And there will be opportunity at the end to ask questions to our panellists from Southampton. Please do put your questions into the chat function at the bottom of the screen and we can address them towards the end of today's event. As the official university partner of Southampton Football Club, Solent University and the Saints are looking at working together to deliver this series of exclusive webinars. And what we want to do is to look at what it's like to work at Southampton Football Club and to consider the education pathways available to help you get there. And so in the next hour or so, we will be focusing on the career pathways of Saints employees and how specific university courses supported by Southampton Football Club offer a work-ready, world-ready path into the sports industry. So in a minute, I'll invite the panel to introduce ourselves and then I'll pass over to Caroline to start a series of questions looking at how our panellists got into where they are today and what life is like working at a Premier League football club. So then if I could invite the panellists to introduce themselves, please, and perhaps we'll start with Sarah and then Luke and then Lee and then Zoe. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, hi everyone. So my name's Sarah Batters and I'm the Director of Marketing and Partnerships here at Southampton Football Club. So my educational background, I actually did a Master's in International Relations and Politics and Spanish. So nothing to do with sport or even business at all. So how I've ended up here at the football club, when I left university, I went to work for Procter & Gamble for 7 years in FMCG, so that was really business school for me. And then I moved into working for startups and agencies, mainly in media and tech, and some sports related projects then as well. But football has always been my personal passion. Followed my team since I was born, and I was always wanting to work in football. It really became alive for me when I actually did a hackathon at Manchester City and slept in the Etihad for 36 hours, and it made me realise, hang on a minute, I can do my job and also work in football. And so I've joined Southampton a year ago, and as a Director of Marketing and Partnerships, I'm responsible for all marketing that the club does, so primarily to sell our tickets, to sell hospitality, retail, etc., and also responsible for all of our relationships with our partners, which includes marketing campaigns for our partners and also acquiring new partners. And I'm also responsible for our data research and analytics team, so making sure that data and insights power everything that we do. So that's me.
I'm not sure if she said Sarah's a Manchester City fan, but she doesn't want to say it out loud. There we go. I'm a Nottingham Forest fan and far more humble, but there we go. I'm Luke Nicholson. I'm the Director of Brand and Content at the football club. I've been in sport for around 13 years. I started out working for TalkSport Radio, and then I worked for a couple of brands and a couple of agencies focused always on content, digital and social media. I think in my current role, to give context, I'm responsible for all the content that goes out across our social and digital channels fundamentally, and my overriding job at the club is to help tell our unique story, and what we call the Southampton way, which we'll probably come on to talk about a little bit more a bit later on. But really, it's what makes us unique, and then my job is to try and tell that story across digital and offline as well, wherever possible. From an education perspective, I'm an English and film graduate. I went to University of Kent, and I was the editor of the newspaper there, which kind of was useful in terms of team management skills and coordinating and project management, all things that I do on a daily basis now. And then also outside of that, I was part of a group that led the launch of a local radio station, which absolutely helped me get my first job in the industry. So should that be relevant information, kind of the actual education piece plus the supplementaries were kind of combined to help me get my career in the industry.
Thanks, Luke. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Lee Oswald. I'll bring it a bit more local, so I'm a Southampton fan. So obviously extremely proud to be working for Southampton Football Club in partnership with Southampton University. My background is finance, accountancy and business. So I've spent sort of 7 years post A-levels qualifying as a management accountant. So that's kind of my background in terms of education. We'll get into that in a bit more detail around the accountancy and finance options here. I suppose prior to working here, which I've been at Saints now for 7 years, coming up in February. Spent a lot of time, 6 years of those working in our core finance team. I managed our procurement business, which was £32 million worth of spend across the whole club, and then since then moved into a commercial role, working for the board and the commercial directors and heads of around kind of looking at the business, understanding what the financial performance is, and how we change our business to grow going forwards. So prior to here, I've worked at big companies, B&Q, Zurich, and I think one of the key things for me that we'll get into is around how the accountancy and business, education really is a transferable skill across many different industries, really. So, and yeah, I think I left school and college, and I applied for Saints when I was 16 years old for a letter just of, please can I work with you? And so my passion for working in football is huge, and I'm 36 now, and that finally came to fruition. So it's a small world how things come around. So that's me. Over to you, Zoe.
Thanks, Lee. Hi, everybody. I'm Zoe O'Sullivan. I'm head of legal here at the club. I've been here for nearly 6 years, but first job in sport, and my path was fairly traditional, although I think now in law it was quite, I think I'm the older model, sort of did the traditional law degree, went on and did LPC. Granted, I did that 2 years part-time whilst working, so I had to give up my weekends for 2 years, while I was also had a job as a paralegal. Then got my training contract in private practice, but on qualification, I qualified in a year which was quite hit quite badly by recession, especially in the commercial sector, which is the pathway for my specialism that I'd chosen. So I actually went straight in-house, which again can be a slightly taboo subject. Lots of myths around you shouldn't go straight in-house on qualification. It can have a big effect on you. You should spend some time in the corporate world, as it were. But actually, that is a big myth, and I'm happy to talk around that and why that's completely untrue. And sort of from there, I worked at an insurance company. I worked at Ageas, so similar to Lee at Zurich, in a fairly big in-house team there. But about sort of 14, 15 months in, I was approached about a job at Saints. and it felt like a job I really couldn't go for, really, because it sounded like such an exciting proposition. And my husband's a Spurs fan, I'll be honest, so when I told him I was going for that, he was obviously a bit, he was like, can't you go to White Hart Lane? I was like, well, that's not really on offer. But he is Southampton born and bred, so he generally likes Southampton to do well until they play Spurs. So I've been here, like I said, nearly 6 years. Worked my way up. The legal teams had quite an interesting transition. It was only actually an established function area from about 2015, which actually in football was quite, it's taken a long time for legal to come in-house in football clubs, but it's actually becoming a lot more of the norm now. But yeah, I suppose my primary purpose is to support all the teams in making sure they get to achieve all their goals and what they want to do, whether that's stuff on match day, whether that's business day to day, whether that's sponsors, whether that's heating and cooling. It can be completely and utterly different, and that's why I love my job. So, but again, I can talk a little bit more about that as we go through.
Thank you, Zoe. That was, and all of the Saints guys there, Sarah, Lee, and Luke. That's been great to hear your backgrounds and how you got started. I think certainly our students and some of the applicants that might be either looking to study business and law or be interested in working in a football industry environment are really interested to hear that you can come into this from so many different starting points, which is interesting. I would like to throw a question out to Zoe as you're here at the moment. Zoe, you mentioned about the best career advice you've received and some of the myths. If I could just ask you, what if you can think about debunking those myths and the best career advice you've had that you'd like to pass on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've had quite a lot of students, because I've done a few of these talks now for law firms as well, with students trying to obviously get jobs in sport. And I think a big myth is around the in-house versus private practice route. And I was actually advised a similar thing in terms of going in-house on qualification will really hinder your experience levels. The myth around, in-house is 9 to 5 job. It's a real easy job, isn't it? It's a lot easier than working in a corporate law firm, and that is absolutely not the case. I've worked in both, and actually in-house is a lot harder. It's a lot more fun. You get to really delve in and dive, and I'm pretty nosy, so I quite like my job because I get to see and hear about pretty much everything that's going on, because that's part of my role here. But I think some of the biggest advice I've ever had is don't be afraid to give something a chance, give everything a go. I think I was always a little bit skeptical and was afraid that, I had to be a certain way or act a certain way, or, I don't know, throw people under the bus and all of this sort of things that you sort of hear around, to succeed. And actually, no, really own your truth, be true to who you are. You can still be really successful, but just be you and have a go, and don't be afraid to dip your toe in. That's probably what I would say.
That's lovely. I love that phrase, own your truth, and be authentic to who you are. So don't leave that all of the personality that you have and all of the skill sets and experiences, don't leave that at the door when you come into work. Bring it into work, bring the whole person to work. And that sounds really more fun. I'm gonna throw a question over to Lee now, if that's all right. Lee, I know that you touched on your route through there into accountancy and finance and contracts and commercial, rather, so not contracts, commercial, and the importance of some of the professional accreditation. But just to ask, the role of that education and professional accreditation, which we're very committed to in Solent as well, the professional accreditation. Can you sort of say what part that played for you in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, being really transparent and honest here, I left school with great grades. I went to college, and I left with nothing. I did 3 A-levels in accountancy, business, and IT, and yeah, I walked out with nothing there because I played too much sport ultimately. So I was in the playing field more than I was in the classroom, which I subsequently paid the price for in a way, because I couldn't go to university because of that. So I had to go a different route, which was, you can have an accountancy and finance degree, or you can go into do an AAT qualification. And the AAT qualification is accounting technicians, and that meant I had to work 9 to 5. My wages were £7,000 a year at that point, and I was then spending 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock, 5 days a week, for 3 years, doing a degree ultimately at a specific financial education service, which was funded through my job and so forth. So I learned the hard way there. I then used that though to my advantage, and my AAT, and similarly to the degree level, allows you to go on to do choices. So you go on to do a 4-year course, whether that's in chartered accountancy or commercial accountancy. The difference, one being, you work for a client base and you do audits and tax for them clients, or to my preference, you go into a specific company like Saints and you put all your efforts and ambition and drive into the success of that one company, which was my preference. So my education, I then, kind of went through that additional 4 years education, but the role it plays is absolutely paramount in my sector, because it gives you the flexibility and security to be able to apply your skills into different sectors. So you're never really limited into what industry you want to work in. But it also gives you that broad sense of business that allow, I actually ended up getting made redundant from a company sort of before I joined Saints, so 7 years ago. It's at a complete loose end. So I ended up actually applying my knowledge to start up my own company, which I did for a little while and ran for a year. So I managed the kind of the setup of it, the regulation or kind of setting up of a company, right through to the sales, marketing, and kind of the strategic growth plans for that company. And then when I found myself able to apply for a new role, I was in Saints, and that got me over a bit of a challenge in my career. So yeah, transferable skills massively, but something you can always fall back on and have in your locker to nobody can take it away from you, which has always been my one of my proudest moments in my sort of educational.
Yeah, that resilience it gives to you, and I think having worked hard to get that, you can do it, and I think that's something we support our students these days. Many are working, some study full-time even while they're part-time working. So it is important that, as you say, you balance that, but you learn from it as well. And the accreditations are just great. As you say, you get that professional body experience. We're lucky that our degree has a number of those, and we have 5 exemptions from five accounting bodies, including ACCA and CIMA and ICAEW. I think you'll recognise those ones as well. So it's great to have. I think accountancy and finance, gives you such a great insight to business and to the contractual side of things as well. I'm going to open another question now, if that's okay, through to Luke. Just thinking about the football industry, Luke, and how it's evolved, a bit like everything, with digital and everything, how it's evolved in the last 20 years, and the ways that you think it will evolve, from a brand perspective, from a football industry perspective. Is that okay, Luke?
Yeah, that's fine.
Big question.
Yeah, it's a big question. So looking back 20 years and looking forward 20 years, I might need more than 3 minutes. But I think that the thing with the role of a football club now, or what a football club is, kind of, if you go back to the last 20 years with Premier League, what's happened with the Premier League is it's become a global property. And I think, and with that, aligned to the growth of the Premier League has been digital and social media kind of booming at the same time. So all of a sudden, what it is to support a football team or to work for a football team has changed dramatically. You have fans who, like Lee, who live local to Southampton, but we also have fans across the globe now, and their experience of a football club, and whether it be Southampton or Chelsea or Real Madrid, is different depending whether they're local or not, but they're not less important. I think what the huge change in football and the industry is that you essentially have these two sets of audiences now. You have those people that come to the game, that buy tickets, they come to a stadium, and you have others that still love the club, but their experience of the club is very different. And the big shift there is to do with the role of digital as the Premier League has become a global property. And I think then, as you kind of you fast forward a little bit, what's happened with the growth of the popularity of the league is that the size of the audiences has dramatically increased, and with increase of audience, what you then have is it becomes an attractive proposition to advertisers, to people. If you win the Premier League, or even if you're in the Premier League, there's a lot of revenue, there's a lot of money attached to being a successful football club. That attracts owners, it attracts players, it attracts advertisers, and all these things are really impacting football in a way that it's kind of forcing football and football clubs to become more sophisticated. Football clubs 20, 30 years ago existed to make sure that there was enough players on the pitch to win a game of football. Whereas now, fundamentally, clubs are a global brand, and they exist 7 days a week. And they can drive revenue in addition to what you can do in terms of winning a game of football. And so clubs behaving as a brand as well as a football club is critical. And as you see on this call, there's nobody attached to the football side of the business, unless I'm mistaken. That's just evidence of just how complex and sophisticated a football club needs to be now and will continue to be, because if you're now a brand, say, some of our partners, if you take Hummel or if you take Sportsbet, who are our partners, they can choose to advertise anywhere. The reason they choose to advertise with a football club is because, they can get seen, their brand and their logo and their activity can be seen in a way that if they advertise on TV or radio, actually it will be seen by less people. So what a football club is now in terms of being a vehicle for those brand partners has changed as well. And that all starts from the growth of Premier League and the role of digital and social in it being able to share that product.
I think you're exactly right. That timing of technology and the development of the broadcast medium, and there's been a recent documentary on it which was fascinating for anyone that didn't see it, about the rise of the Premier League and the amount of money and the business acumen required now, and as you say, the professionalization. So it's really interesting, and I think the same is happening in education as well. It's gone from being something that was more of a niche and a little bit more elite, and it's now widened and broadened, and it's much more accessible from a digital context, and we too are looking at those same things. So interesting how it is. I mean, I think the idea of fandom and all the way that your fans can engage with you digitally is so fascinating, isn't it? Yeah,
and I think as well, if you think about not just how the fans engage with the club, but also the role of footballers now generally. So a couple of insights that kind of come across my desk in the last few days is that Theo Walcott, who's one of our players, his Twitter account's 3 times the size of Southampton's, but a more pertinent one is Ronaldo moving to United. Overnight, United have added 2.5 million followers to their Instagram following. So it's not just the role of football clubs now. Players are bigger than clubs. Fans follow players as much as they follow clubs, and that's a big shift. And that's a challenge for us as a football club, and one we can't ignore. But it's an interesting evolution of where football's gone to, really.
Yeah, the power of the celebrity, the pull of the star, and the influence they have and can have, which is really, really interesting, as we've seen. Thank you very much, Luke. And I know we've got a question in now, which has come from a viewer, and it's an interesting one, really. I think I'm going to be directing this one at Sarah. It's an interesting one about clubs with international reach, building on that idea and theme that you've been talking about, Luke. How important is fluency in foreign languages to the various career pathways in sport? Sarah, just to fling that to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, which is an interesting one. So I've worked internationally, and I'm fluent in 2 languages other than English, so 3. Which is interesting. I think in the case of when you're working for an English Premier League football team, and especially Southampton, and Southampton, we don't have, you know, as many foreign players, a lot of English players. I don't really use my languages. But saying that, some partners that we talk to in different countries, it's helped me at some times to be able to have conversations in native languages. But that's more of a kind of nice to have rather than a necessity. However, with the global nature of sport, I think if you think of a career path, what it opens up is careers in other countries. It would be very difficult to work in France or in La Liga if you didn't speak Spanish or French, because a lot of sport is done in native language. So I think in that case, it opens up opportunities from a career path point of view. But yeah, no, certainly something I don't regret having as part of my arsenal, and in previous roles have used a lot more. Right now, though, my main partners are Estonian and Danish. And I learned a few words in Estonian visiting them recently, but not much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very impressed with 3 languages, Sarah. I studied abroad with my degree in German, in Germany, and know a bit of German. But I think, as you say, the opportunity is that flexibility. We do have opportunities for people to study abroad and work. And I think these opportunities just enrich your flexibility and your resilience. And I think even a cultural appreciation is really important in a global context, because as you say, you've got players from all over the world, even within Southampton. So thank you for that.
I'll just add one story to it. Is I did a year abroad as part of my Spanish degree, and I went to the University of Deusto in Spain. And recently we had Athletic Bilbao come over to visit us and play. And that was one time I did use my language, because none of them spoke a single word of English. And they were in the boardroom, and I was able to speak to them. I spoke to one of them, and then they all got quite excited that someone in England spoke Spanish, because I don't think they came across it very often. And they kindly gave me a badge of their club to recognise I went to, I used to live in studied in their town. So yeah, there are moments, and yeah, I 100% exactly what you just said. Recommend studying abroad, but also my first role, I moved to Switzerland and worked in a French-speaking environment. And just at that point, my French, I studied Spanish formally. French was a very basic level, but just going and immersing and living in a different country, even though my working language was English, was a fantastic experience. So I'd recommend that to anyone.
Great. Always good to enhance and add value to the core of what you do, and gives you those options, as you say, and makes you gives you chances to do things a bit differently as well. Thank you for that. There's a follow-on question actually, Sarah, which has again come from a viewer, really, which is really around about diversity and at the club, and with the viewer asking if the industry is open for Asian students, and will they get the same opportunity to work in the English football industry? So that's an interesting question.
Yeah, and I say absolutely. So, we're part of one of the most diverse leagues in the world, and, we want to reflect that in our business as well. So, regardless of nationality, of religion, ethnicity, if you have the required skills for the job, then absolutely everyone has an equal opportunity, and we do see that in the club.
I think that comes back to the global reach of what we do, and I think that it's amazing for people to take up opportunities, and we all learn more from that exchange as well. I'm going to hand over to Kevin now who's got even more questions to probe you with, and he's a lawyer, so good luck.
Even more probing questions. Caroline, thank you very much, and thank you for your contributions so far. And it's been fascinating to hear the different routes that you've gone on to get to where you are. But I wonder if, before we come on to that point, Luke, I'd like to come to you if I may. And you dropped in your introduction this thing about the Southampton way,
Yeah.
and we met a few days ago, and I was really impressed with your vision, your objectives around turning potential into excellence. And I wondered if you could talk about that, perhaps in the context of education.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is with football clubs is that all clubs are different, and that's by design and by necessity, really. When we talk about the Southampton way, I think if you're a sports fan, you'll hear all clubs talk about a version of that. They'll have the Liverpool way or the United way or what have you. And I think for Southampton, for us, what that means to us is about developing talent and turning potential into excellence. And if you do follow football, you'll know that we have a track record of producing players through our academy. So our academy is world renowned, and we have, we've developed players, that have gone on to be, global stars. Gareth Bale, probably the biggest example of that. But strategically as well, we buy players who other clubs might not take a gamble on, and then we bring them in and we develop them into being future stars. So people like Mane or Van Dijk, who have gone on to be kind of global stars at Liverpool, and there will be other players as well. But I think that the reason that we have that approach is because we have to do things differently. The Southampton way is born out of us needing to develop talent, because we aren't owned by, we were talking about Man City earlier. We don't have the money that Manchester City do have, and they have their strategy, and Southampton have a different strategy, and developing talent is at the heart of that. But I think what that then does is it gives you, that runs through the business. So as a club, we absolutely endorse that off the pitch as well. So we want people to join this football club and better themselves, to come spend time at the club as a staff member and leave with more skills. We're committed to training and development of people, and we want to give people opportunities in this industry or within roles that work for them. And I think probably from a behavioural perspective, the turning potential into excellence kind of motivates everybody to try things that other clubs might not do. So we try and take risks wherever we can. We look to try and do things differently. So that spirit, which kind of is born out of an on-pitch approach, does run through the business, and that comes through making people better and players better, but also in how we like to try and innovate, or we like to try and be a challenger wherever we can and kind of punch above our weight, which is something that Southampton Football Club kind of have a big track record to do.
Luke, thank you. And what's really come across over the last 20 minutes or so is the breadth of different career routes. And this is just in one industry, in the sports industry. And Zoe, I wondered if I could turn to you, please. And you hinted at and gave us an overview, I suppose, of your zigzag career in terms of what you've done in your career to get to where you've got to now. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that, and there may be a part B, if I may. There may be people on the call who aspire to be a lawyer, maybe looking to study law. We offer law at Solent. We've got a fantastic new courtroom which opened just a few months ago. But what does it look like for you being a lawyer? You hinted at things like sponsors and heating systems and things like that. But what does a week look like for you in the legal world?
I think I learned very early on, and maybe the hard way when I first joined the club. I was really meticulous. I'd write things down, I'd write to-do lists, and I thought, right, this week I really have to achieve these things, I have to do these contracts, I have to meet these people around sort of compliance projects, or very quickly realised that football is a very fast-paced environment. Things move very quickly, very different to insurance. you have to be ready to react very quickly, whether that's, I don't know, during the transfer window and we're signing a new player, there could be various comms that we're going out with that my team will have to support Sarah's team on, around prize draws, competitions, various other things that are going on. We could have sponsors that we want to have in for matches, so we have to make sure that we get them signed up before we have to get LED things across in certain timelines and stuff that's obviously Sarah will be able to talk more about. But there's deadlines associated for so many different things, even just to run a match, and we can do things last minute because we want to obviously make it the best possible match for fans, for everybody coming, and we also obviously want our sponsors and everybody else to have that engagement as well. So my typical day or week changes every single day. Yes, there's lots of meetings. We love a meeting here at Saints. And yes, I have a team. We do a lot of drafting contracts, but there's also a lot of other things that sort of I do, I suppose, in terms of sort of being in meetings, just advising as opposed to sort of drafting, I suppose, or sitting down and drafting a 30-page contract. But yeah, there's a lot of just ad hoc advice. There's a lot of support around projects. There's a lot of support around tenders and new suppliers and new partners. There's various things that I do. So being a lawyer actually is, maybe in-house, it's fair to say, is a lot different to probably what I expected when I was doing my law degree, because when I was doing my law degree, and then when I got some work experience in a law firm, I thought it was really interesting. I was really enjoyed it, and I felt like I was getting really stuck in. And actually, it was when I was doing my training contract and I was doing secondments to in-house businesses as well. So I went to work at British American Tobacco for a period of time, and I also went to Aegeus actually on secondment, which also helped me obviously when I was looking for that job on qualification. Completely different work environment, working in sort of a tobacco company which was international, multinational, and so many weird and wonderful things that you're getting involved in that come across your desk day to day, and you don't really have a lot of time to ask too many questions. You just have to go, okay, and then get on with it. Whereas here, the thing I love is that you can get really stuck in and immerse yourself in it. So I suppose you can get as involved or not involved as you want to be, but the running of a football club is very interesting. We are a business at the end of the day. We're trying to make money. We're not just, it's not just about, obviously, it's massively about the players on the pitch, but there is other factors at play as well. So I love how different it is. I love that every day isn't the same. I'm never bored, and neither's my team, so that's a plus. We don't have time to be bored either. So I think if I said that, Sarah and Luke could be trying to give me more work. So I think I'd say to anybody that wants to go get some experience in-house, or you're not just a commercial lawyer anymore, you are a kind of, a little bit about everything. And then if you don't, yes, you can go phone a friend that will have a bit more experience potentially in tax or competition law, or but you do end up really getting to know different areas of the business, and it's less about you're not really talking about applying law, you're talking about just business and risk, and it's talking about law, but you're not actually saying, well, section 35 of this act says this, no one wants to hear that. So it's more about knowing the business. You get to know the business, and then in effect your lawyering kind of skills become more about being a business partner, and that kind of risk assessment advisor, as opposed to spouting GDPR and things at Sarah's team.
I could, if you don't mind, I'd just coming in on what Zoe's saying there, which is right at the start, she talked about how reactive being at a football club is. And I think I can kind of, I'm not saying you said it in a negative way, it almost feels like it's a failing at a football club. Oh, we're just reacting all the time. It's not that we're just reacting all the time, but I think the football club is like probably a normal business just on fast forward. Like everything that happens at a football club happens at most businesses. It just happens a lot quicker. But what happens at every business, and especially at football clubs, is sometimes things go well and sometimes things don't go well. And what you quickly learn at a football club is when something doesn't go well, there's not really a lot of time to dwell on it. You have to deal with it, you put it right, you learn from it, and you move on. And I think that kind of the relevancy of that is just that that's normal, right? And I think it's, you know, being in a position or kind of going in with your eyes open, whether it be football or business, that things do go wrong and that's not unusual. You know, the good thing almost about football clubs is it happens so fast that you're moving on really quickly, and people like Zoe are there to help, you know, tell you whether you broke the law or not. But you know, just kind of that reactive nature is such a real trait. It's not unique to football.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, sorry if that's how it came across. Sure. Absolutely
no.
not.
But I think what has come across really clearly in what you've both said is about skill set development, and I suppose in my head the phrase all experience is good experience. So for people who are on the call today who are perhaps looking at higher education, looking at going into university, maybe looking at vacation schemes, or maybe looking at work placements, all work experience is valuable work experience and teaches the really, really crucial resilience skills and agility skills. And one of the things we seek to do within law is really harness that professional practice ethos, because Zoe, you're absolutely right, it's not just about spouting the GDPR, although that's my field and I'll forgive you for that one. It is about being able to respond and adapt to what's going on around you. Just a reminder, if you are listening and you have any questions, do feel free to pop them in the chat, and we'll have some time in a few moments. But I wonder if I could just change the narrative from law, Lee, and perhaps look at sort of accounting and finance and perhaps more your field. And for people who are on the call that are thinking, well, I might go into that type of area, whether it's accounting, whether it's finance, whether it's sort of the commercial side of the sports industry, what type of career routes are open to them? What are some of the things that they could explore that perhaps they're not familiar with at this moment?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good opportunity to just set the scene, I suppose, at Saints. You know, our club is really split into 4 areas. We obviously have the football side of the business. We have a commercial side to the business. We have a shared services side to the business, which is all of our finance, IT, legal support areas. And we've also obviously got a charitable arm in our foundation. So across all of those 4 areas, we've got about 45 different teams. So literally ranging from, you know, at the football side of things, we've obviously got the first team support, scouting, kit and equipment teams, legal, HR, finance, IT division, safeguarding, that are all within that support network. And then commercially, we've got 19 business areas. So they range from, you know, our cash generating areas. So we've got the different departments like ticketing, retail, catering, right through to then supporting that is a bunch of, you know, media, marketing teams. And then, you know, in the operational side of the business, we've got things like groundsmen, chefs. So I think I've just written down here some, you know, some roles that may not have just naturally jumped out when you think of a football club. And, you know, we've got sales teams, we've got events organisers for things like weddings and proms and all of that kind of conference and events business that we have. Chefs, customer services teams, retail staff, painters and decorators are employees of our business that, you know, make sure everything's working right under the bonnet of the scenes, really. And then right through to things like fundraisers within the charity, day-to-day going out, spending time in the community and really connecting the football club to the community and the fans. So it's hugely diverse. And, you know, the joy I love about the football club is that it is so diverse. And to Zoe's point about you get involved in an awful lot here, all of those roles are within a company club that has only 400 employees. So there's so many different really industries that are within our club, which makes it exciting every day. So the opportunities are endless.
And I think what you've done there, Lee, superbly, is just encouraged those that are listening to really look into sectors and say, yes, I want to go into accounting or finance or marketing, whatever that might be. But underneath those headings, there's so much opportunity, so much potential for. I can't remember who it was who said at the beginning. I think it was Sarah or Zoe, about being true to yourself and being able to express yourself in those fields. Sarah, can I come to you? And in terms of your role, you will inevitably have responsibility for recruiting and bringing people into your team, into the club. And we'll have people who are zooming in. They may have been to some interviews. They may have engaged to some degree. But what type of skills and what type of advice, perhaps, would you give for future recruits into the particular business?
It's a question I love to answer. In my first job, I actually kept on doing recruitment for my old university, and I was very passionate about helping students turn up to interviews and do well. So I can tell you a bit of what I look for when I interview people. I think, to Lee's point, there's a lot of varied roles at the club, and obviously, depending on the role, there's a level of actual professional experience and expertise in that area. But if I talk a little bit more generally about kind of skills looking for when hiring someone, I think, classic project management skills is so important, really, regardless what role you do at the club. And especially, as Luke said, everything moves here really quickly. And so almost advanced project management skills, communication skills, and being able to structurally, with process, work through different projects is invaluable. I'd say as well, it's very important. One of our club values is innovation, and we really at Southampton like to pride ourselves on doing things differently, always thinking differently on and off the pitch. And so that's something I look at when I'm recruiting people, is examples of innovation, or trying new things, or trying to change something, just questioning the status quo and looking, okay, can we do this better? Even, just like on the football pitch, even if it's marginal gains, just always looking at, there must be a better way of us doing what we're doing. And I think lastly, the other thing, I personally look for and always advise students this, is ways to demonstrate leadership capabilities. So that's not meaning you need to be the president of whatever society or group, but there's plenty of ways to develop leadership skills within societies, within your class, within projects, within outside work or activities, and just being really able to think about those experiences in a leadership mindset, and how to coach people, how to help people learn new skills, and how to set direction, and get people to buy into your direction, and stakeholder management. And I always just urge students to just look at how can you find those opportunities while you're at university to be able to develop and demonstrate. Because for me, when interviewing people, it's those kind of things that really set people apart. And then I know I'm bringing someone into the business that wants to change things, wants to have a go, wants to try new things, but also is someone who not necessarily lead a team, because that's not always the case, but someone that can lead themselves and lead their work.
And there's some fantastic advice in there, Sarah, about leadership, about innovation, about what you have achieved, and using the context within which you're in to demonstrate those leadership skills, or the innovation that you've done that's led to a positive outcome. And there's some fantastic stuff there. Thank you. I think we've got one more question. So just a call for anybody who wants to put a question in the chat to do so. But I'll come back to you, Zoe, if I may. And really, I just want to ask about what's been your most memorable moment in your professional career? That could be as part of the football club now, or perhaps a war story from the past.
I think, the journey in law is, it's probably going to sound really boring to some, but my path into qualification and actually getting that training contract was particularly difficult. The sort of traditional older path now, I think, or the old archaic traditional route of the 2-year training contract was quite burdensome to achieve. And I think one of my most memorable moments, because I nearly walked away from law, was getting my training contract, because it felt like at that moment in time for me that the debt, the time spent, the lack of sleep, the struggling financially, I struggled to pay rent, I struggled to eat properly, and all of that, because I kept telling myself it was worth it and I was going to get it. I almost gave up after a period of time, because I just thought it's never going to happen for me. But when it did happen, it really did feel like the icing on the cake for me. And from then it only got better. It's not an easy job. But you do have to really enjoy it in a way, because you do spend a lot of time doing it. So that, and also, the job at Saints was a massive achievement for me, because it felt like massive kudos. Partly because I thought, well, I don't know anything about football when I went for my interview. So I always thought that was going to be a massive red flag against me. But actually, having done interviews now, like Sarah has for different roles, the football side of it isn't really that important in terms of loving the football. That actually comes, and I'm a massive fan now, because that's just naturally what happens when you work at a club. You get really buried within it. But actually, I think just getting the job and actually buying into the Southampton way and what the club was about, it's a really lovely place to work. Everyone's super friendly, and that was a massive achievement and memorable moment for me as well.
Fantastic. And again, a thread that's really come through really clearly is this idea of peaks and troughs as you go through to get to your intended career, or your dream, or your aspiration. Caroline, can I pass back over to you for bringing us into land? Thank you.
That's great. It's been absolutely fascinating. I think I've got a question in the chat here, actually, which is around the differences and similarities in the football business between South America and England, which is a very specific question. I'm not sure who to throw that one out to, really. Does anyone have a preference on that? Would that be Luke or Sarah?
I'm thinking, my immediate thought is just around the attractiveness of the product of football for those leagues, and really I'm not sure whether this is really the question that's being asked, but the Premier League is a destination for a lot of players, and therefore a lot of and all the peripherals that come with that, from media attention and business attention and marketing and brands and advertisers. I think South American football, from what I understand, is huge, but is local to South America, and players try and move over here as the kind of the destination piece. Beyond a very kind of high level view on the difference between the leagues, I'm not sure I'll be able to give a view on much more, unfortunately.
No, sorry. Well, I could just tell a story I heard recently. One of my partners, our main club partner, Sportsbet, we're doing a partnership in South America with a South American team, and our structure at Southampton, we have a board of 5. And so, when we're getting things signed off, we take it through the board. And this club in South America had a board of 170. And so they needed 170 people to agree to the partnership deal. And so, that's something I've heard recently. I don't know if that's just this one club or more, but it just made me think, oh my goodness, if we had a board of 170, we wouldn't be able to go at the pace that we go at. But
sounds like a governance nightmare.
The other
Challenging.
The other thing I would add as well is that there's certain, talking about that celebrity, football celebrities. I know that James Rodriguez, South American footballer who joined Everton, I mean, he's got a ridiculous, I think he's got close to 50 million social media followers. So I think again, the love and adoration that people have for players from South America and how that they become by default global superstars. I think when James Rodriguez signed for Everton, there were billboards in Times Square with him in an Everton shirt. So Everton, talking about football clubs being global brands, Everton got no control over that. That's all James Rodriguez. They've got a degree of control, but by buying a player with that much influence, they become relevant in Times Square. Where whether or not they're meant to be.
That's incredible. Yeah, that reach is incredible, as you say, and something that is not wholly owned